The phone rang at 3:11 a.m. It was not loud. It did not scream or buzz repeatedly. It rang once, stopped, then rang again, measured, patient, almost respectful. And yet that sound split the night in two. There was life if Ethan Hale was awake before his mind understood why. He lay still on his back, staring at the ceiling of the small bedroom, where a faint crack ran from the corner above the closet door to the center of the room. He had noticed that crack years ago and never fixed it. He had told himself it didn't matter. Some things, once broken, were easier to ignore. The phone rang a third time. Ethan reached out, his arm heavy, his hand trembling slightly. The screen glowed against the darkness, illuminating his face with a pale blue light. An unknown number. He knew that certainty did not come from logic. It came from somewhere deeper, quieter, more frightening. The place where unspoken fears wait patiently, convinced that one day they will be right. He answered. "Mr. Hale?" The voice on the other end was calm, professional, carefully neutral. "Yes." His own voice sounded distant to him, as if it belonged to another man standing nearby. "This is Mercy General Hospital. I'm calling about your mother, Ruth Hale." The room seemed to shrink. The air thickened. Ethan sat up slowly, his feet touching the cold floor, grounding him just enough to stay present. "She was brought in earlier tonight," the voice continued. "I'm sorry to inform you that she passed away shortly after arrival." There it was. No drama, no pause for impact, just a sentence, delivered cleanly, efficiently, like a door being closed. Ethan did not cry. He did not gasp. He did not ask questions. He said nothing. "Mr. Hale?" the voice prompted gently. "I'm here," he replied, though he felt anything but present. The woman explained details: cardiac arrest, efforts made, time of death. Ethan heard the words but did not absorb them. His mind had already retreated to a place of stillness, a place he had learned to survive in long ago. After the call ended, he remained seated on the edge of the bed, phone still in his hand, the screen now dark. His mother was dead. The sentence floated in his mind, disconnected from emotion, like a line from a book he had read once but never finished. He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city slept under a thin veil of fog. Streetlights cast halos of dull orange light. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed briefly, then faded. Ethan rested his forehead against the glass. Ruth Hale had been 72 years old, a widow for nearly a decade, a woman of quiet faith, stubborn kindness, and unrelenting hope. The kind of hope that embarrassed Ethan in his younger years, the kind that spoke of God as if he was still listening. They had not spoken in almost 3 years, not since the argument, not since the words that could not be taken back. Ethan closed his eyes, and without permission, memory rose. The kitchen had smelled of coffee and burnt toast that morning. Rain tapped against the window in uneven rhythms. Ruth stood by the sink, her back to him, hands resting on the counter, as if she needed support. "You can't just walk away from this," she had said quietly. "I'm not walking away," Ethan replied, his voice sharp, defensive. "I'm choosing something else." "You're running," she said, turning to face him. Her eyes were tired but steady. "And you know it." He laughed then, a bitter sound. "You always do this. You always make it about God, about calling, about sacrifice." "Because it matters," she said, "because your life matters more than your pride." That word, pride, had ignited something ugly inside him. "You don't get to tell me who I am," he snapped. "You don't get to decide what God wants from me." Her voice trembled. "I just don't want you to lose your faith." He grabbed his jacket, his keys. "I already have." The silence that followed those words had been unbearable. Ruth's mouth opened, then closed. Tears filled her eyes, but she did not cry. As he reached the door, she spoke again. "God will wait for you, Ethan. Even if you walk away, but I may not always be here." He did not turn around. Now, years later, the weight of that sentence crushed him. "I may not always be here." Ethan sank to his knees beside the bed. His chest tightened, breath shallow. For the first time since the phone call, something inside him cracked. Not grief, regret, a raw, burning regret that had no outlet. He pressed his fists into the mattress, his head bowed. Words rose instinctively to his lips, words learned in childhood, words whispered beside his mother at night, but they died there. He could not pray. Not now. Not after everything. God had been absent for years, or maybe Ethan had been. Either way, prayer felt dishonest. Like calling a number, he had blocked himself. He remained there until the first light of dawn crept into the room, pale and unforgiving. The funeral was held 4 days later in a small church on the edge of town. Ethan had not been inside a church in nearly a decade. The wooden pews smelled faintly of polish and age. Sunlight streamed through stained glass, casting fractured colors across the floor. He sat in the back. He recognized few faces. Time had moved on without him. Lives had continued. Ruth's friends hugged one another, whispered memories, wiped tears. At the front of the sanctuary, her casket rested beneath a simple cross. Ethan stared at it, his jaw tight. The pastor spoke gently, carefully avoiding platitudes. He spoke of Ruth's faith, her quiet service, her unwavering belief in God's goodness, even when life was unkind. She trusted God with her whole heart, the pastor said. Not because life was easy, but because she believed God was faithful. Ethan felt a strange heat behind his eyes. Faithful, that word again. When the service ended, people approached him. Hands on his shoulder, murmured condolences. He nodded, thanked them, remained distant. Then an elderly woman he barely remembered stopped in front of him. Her name was Margaret, a longtime friend of his mother's. She held his hands in hers, her grip surprisingly strong. "Your mother prayed for you every day," she said softly. Ethan stiffened. "She didn't need to." Margaret looked at him with gentle clarity. "She wanted to, even when you stopped calling, even when you were angry." Something in her tone suggested she knew more than she said. "She never stopped believing God would bring you back," Margaret continued. "Not to her, to him." Ethan pulled his hands away. "Please don't." Margaret nodded, understanding. "I just wanted you to know." As she walked away, Ethan felt something inside him unravel further. That night, back in his empty apartment, Ethan opened a box he had taken from his mother's house. Inside were photo albums, old letters, and a worn leather Bible. He had not touched a Bible in years. It fell open naturally, as if accustomed to being opened often. Inside the cover, in his mother's handwriting, were words written in blue ink. "Lord, keep him when I cannot. Bring him home in your time." Ethan slammed the book shut. His breath came hard, uneven. For the first time since her death, tears came freely, not quiet tears, but deep, shuddering sobs that shook his body. "I don't want this," he whispered into the empty room. "I don't want you." But even as he said it, the silence that followed felt heavier than ever, not empty, waiting. And somewhere beneath layers of anger, grief, and denial, a single terrifying thought took root. What if God had never left? And this pain was the beginning of being found. The night stretched on, unanswered. And Ethan did not know that this was only the first fracture, the first step into a journey that would dismantle everything he had built to avoid grace. The house did not smell like death. That surprised Ethan. He had expected something heavy, stale, unmistakable. Instead, the small yellow house on Linden Street smelled of lavender and old books, of furniture polish, and the faint sweetness of bread that had once been baked there regularly. The air felt lived in, warm, as though Ruth might step out of the hallway at any moment and ask him if he was hungry. Ethan stood in the doorway longer than necessary, keys still in his hand. He had avoided this place for years, not because it was far, but because it held too much of who he had been and who he had refused to be. Now it waited for him, quiet and patient, like everything else she had ever left behind. He stepped inside. The floorboards creaked under his weight, a sound so familiar it tightened his throat. His eyes moved automatically from room to room, cataloguing objects that had once defined his childhood. The armchair by the window where she read every evening, the small wooden cross above the kitchen doorway, the framed photo of him at age 10, missing 2 teeth and smiling too wide. Nothing had changed, except everything had. Ethan set his jacket on the chair and moved through the house slowly, as if afraid that moving too quickly might shatter something invisible. He opened drawers. Closets, cabinets, each contained evidence of a life lived deliberately and quietly. Neatly folded linens, handwritten grocery lists, old birthday cards saved long past their relevance. She had kept everything. He found the calendar on the kitchen wall. The dates were marked carefully in her precise handwriting: doctor's appointments, church meetings, prayer group on Thursdays, and then, on the day she died, a single note written in the corner. Call Ethan. Ethan stared at the words until they blurred. She had planned to call him, even after everything. His chest tightened, and he turned away abruptly, as if the calendar had accused him of something, because it had. He moved down the hallway and stopped outside her bedroom. For a moment he considered leaving, locking the door, driving away and never returning. But his feet carried him forward. The bedroom was simple, modest. The bed was neatly made, the floral quilt tucked in carefully, as if Ruth had expected company. On the nightstand sat her reading glasses, a small lamp, and a notebook. Ethan picked up the notebook. It was a prayer journal. He knew immediately. He recognized the format: dates, brief notes, names written over and over again. His name appeared on nearly every page. Ethan, strength. Ethan, protection. Ethan, soften his heart. Ethan, bring him home. His hands shook as he turned the pages. The entries spanned years. Through his silence, through his absence, through her declining health. There was no bitterness in the words, no accusation, only persistence, faith that refused to be insulted by rejection. Ethan sat heavily on the edge of the bed. "What did you think you were doing?" he whispered, though he was not sure whether he was speaking to her or to God. The quiet did not answer. That night, Ethan slept in his childhood bedroom. The bed was too small, the mattress too firm. The walls still painted the pale blue Ruth had chosen decades earlier. Sleep did not come easily. When it did, it brought dreams he had not invited. He was standing in the church of his childhood, the pews empty, the lights dim. His mother sat alone at the front, head bowed. He tried to reach her, but the aisle stretched endlessly. Every step forward felt heavier than the last. When he finally called her name, she did not turn around. Instead, a voice behind him spoke quietly. "You don't need to be afraid anymore." He woke with a start, heart racing, the words echoing in his mind. There was no one in the room, just silence, and the faint sound of birds beginning to stir outside. In the days that followed, Ethan settled into an uncomfortable routine. He sorted through paperwork, met with the lawyer, signed documents that transferred ownership of a house he did not want but could not let go of. Neighbors stopped by with casseroles and condolences. He thanked them politely, kept conversations brief. At night he drank more than he should have. The alcohol dulled the edges of his thoughts, but it did not erase them. It only made the memories heavier, slower, more difficult to outrun. On the 4th night, he found himself sitting on the floor of the living room, his back against the couch, a half-empty glass beside him. The Bible lay open on the coffee table. He did not remember opening it. His eyes fell on a verse his mother had underlined years ago. "The Lord is close to the broken-hearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Ethan scoffed softly. "Close would have been nice earlier," he muttered. His voice cracked despite himself. Anger rose, hot and unfiltered. "You let her die alone," he said aloud, his words sharp in the quiet room. "You let her believe things that never happened. You let her wait for someone who never came back." The words spilled faster now, fueled by grief and years of unspoken resentment. "And now you want me to read this, to feel comfort?" He slammed the Bible shut. The sound echoed louder than he expected. For a moment he sat there, breathing hard, daring the silence to respond. It did not, but something else happened. The anger drained, leaving exhaustion behind. Ethan covered his face with his hands. "I don't know how to come back," he whispered. "I don't even know if I want to." The confession startled him. It was not a prayer, but it was honest. And somewhere deep inside, something shifted. Not relief, not peace, but the faint awareness that this battle was far from over. 2 days later, while cleaning out the garage, Ethan discovered a box tucked behind old paint cans and gardening tools. Inside were letters, all addressed to him. None of them opened. His stomach twisted. He carried the box inside and sat at the kitchen table, staring at it for a long time. Each envelope bore his name, written carefully, patiently, years of unsent words. Finally, he picked one up. The date was from 5 years earlier. His hands trembled as he slid a finger beneath the flap. The letter began simply, "My dear son." Ethan stopped reading. The room felt too small, the air too thick. He folded the letter back into the envelope, heart pounding. Whatever was inside those pages carried weight, truths he had avoided, love he had rejected, and perhaps something worse. Something that might explain why she had never stopped praying. He pushed the box away, standing abruptly. Not yet. Some doors once opened could not be closed again, and Ethan was not ready for what his mother had left behind. Not yet. Outside, the afternoon light faded slowly, shadows lengthening across the floor. And beneath the silence of the house, a question lingered, unspoken, persistent, and unavoidable. What else had Ruth known that Ethan had never been ready to hear? Ethan did not sleep that night. The box of letters sat on the kitchen table, untouched, as if it were a living thing, watching him, waiting. He tried to distract himself with the television, with his phone, with the mindless comfort of noise, but everything felt intrusive, too loud, too hollow. Near dawn, he gave up. He made coffee the way his mother used to, strong, no sugar, and sat across from the box. Outside, rain tapped against the windows, soft but relentless, as if the sky itself had decided to linger. He reached for the oldest envelope. The paper was slightly yellowed, the edges worn. Ruth's handwriting was careful, familiar, deliberate. He opened it. "My dear son, I do not know when you will read this. Maybe you never will. But writing to you feels like speaking when silence becomes too heavy to carry." Ethan swallowed. "I want you to know that I am proud of you, not because of what you've accomplished, but because of who you are, even when you don't see it." He laughed bitterly under his breath. Pride had never been the problem. Disappointment had. He continued reading. "I sense your distance. I feel it in my prayers, in the pauses where your voice used to be. I do not blame you. Life has a way of confusing even the strongest hearts." Ethan's jaw tightened. "If you ever feel unworthy of God's love, please remember this. His grace does not wait for our perfection. It meets us in our absence." The words stung. He folded the letter slowly and set it aside. The second letter was shorter. "Ethan, today I lit a candle for you at church. I asked God to protect you, not from failure, but from becoming someone you are not." His hand shook as he placed it down. The third letter was dated only a year before her death. This one felt heavier. He hesitated before opening it. "My son, there are things I should have told you sooner. There are truths I was afraid would hurt you if spoken too early. If you are reading this, then perhaps the time has come." Ethan's heart began to race. You have always believed that your father left because he did not love us. That is not the whole truth." Ethan stood so abruptly that his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "No," he whispered. The room seemed to tilt. He sat back down, forcing himself to continue. "Your father loved you deeply, more than he knew how to express. What broke him was not the absence of love, but the weight of his own failure." Ethan's breathing grew shallow. There was a night, one you were too young to remember, when your father made a choice that changed everything. A moment of weakness, a betrayal, not of me, but of himself. Ethan closed his eyes, images forming without permission. He came home and confessed. He was devastated, ashamed. He begged God for forgiveness and me for time. Ethan felt a cold ache spread through his chest. "I forgave him. God did too. But your father could not forgive himself." The room was silent except for the rain. He believed leaving would spare you from seeing him as broken. He thought distance would protect you. Ethan pressed a hand to his mouth. It did not. The letter ended there. No details, no justification, just truth. Ethan stared at the table, his reflection faint in the polished wood. All his life, he had built his anger on a single narrative: abandonment, a father who chose absence, a God who allowed it. Now that foundation cracked. The anger had nowhere to land. He left the house before the sun fully rose. The cemetery was nearly empty, the grass dark with rain. He walked slowly, hands in his coat pockets, breath visible in the cool air. Ruth's grave was fresh, the earth still unsettled. He stood there longer than he intended, the words from the letter repeating in his mind. I forgave him. God did too. The bitterness he had carried for decades suddenly felt misdirected, aimed at the wrong target. And beneath it, something far more uncomfortable stirred. Guilt. He had blamed his father for leaving, he had blamed his mother for believing, and he had blamed God for everything else. But no one had ever forced him to walk away. He knelt in the damp grass, ignoring the cold seeping through his jeans. I didn't know, he said quietly. The words felt inadequate. I didn't want to know, he corrected. His throat tightened. I built my life on being angry, he continued. It was easier than admitting I was scared. He waited for something to happen, for comfort, for clarity, for a sign. Nothing came, only silence. But this time the silence did not feel empty. It felt heavy with truth. That evening, Ethan found the last letter in the box. It was not sealed. He unfolded it carefully. Ethan, if you are reading this after I am gone, please forgive me for not saying these words out loud. I was afraid you would turn away before hearing them. Your faith did not disappear because you were weak. It disappeared because you were hurt. Ethan's eyes burned. God is not offended by your questions. He is not threatened by your anger. He has been listening this whole time. Ethan felt something inside him collapse. Walls he had built with careful precision. Do not confuse silence with absence. His breath caught. I love you, and I will see you again. Not because I deserve heaven, but because grace is real. The letter ended with a single line. Come home. Ethan folded the letter slowly, pressing it against his chest. For the first time since the night of the phone call, he did not feel alone. But peace did not come. Instead, something far more difficult arrived. Choice. If what his mother believed was true, if grace had been present all along, then Ethan could no longer hide behind ignorance. The question was no longer whether God existed. It was whether Ethan was willing to face him. And somewhere in the quiet of that small house, the weight of a buried truth pressed harder than ever, demanding an answer, one that would cost him more than anger ever had. Ethan returned to the city 2 weeks later. The drive felt longer than it should have. Miles of asphalt unspooled beneath the tires while his thoughts circled relentlessly. The house on Linden Street faded behind him, but the weight of what he had uncovered traveled with him, packed tightly into his chest. He had not finished reading all the letters. Some truths demanded distance before they could be fully faced. The city welcomed him back with indifference. Traffic lights, crowded sidewalks, the low, constant hum of movement that never paused long enough for reflection. It had always comforted him. The anonymity, the noise, the ability to disappear in plain sight. Now it felt suffocating. His apartment was exactly as he had left it. Clean, minimal, intentionally empty. No photographs, no personal artifacts, nothing that suggested permanence. He dropped his bag by the door and stood there, unmoving. For years, this place had felt safe. Now it felt hollow. Work resumed the following Monday. Ethan was respected in his field. A senior project manager at an architectural firm, he was known for his precision, his restraint, his ability to handle pressure without visible emotion. He built structures that looked solid and reliable, buildings that suggested permanence, even when everything else shifted. No one at the office mentioned his absence. They rarely mentioned personal things at all. At his desk, Ethan stared at a half-finished blueprint, his mind drifting despite his best efforts. Lines blurred, measurements lost meaning. "You okay?" He looked up to see Claire standing beside his desk, holding a stack of folders. She had worked with him for 5 years. Efficient, observant, too perceptive for small talk. "I'm fine," he said automatically. She studied him for a moment longer than necessary. "You don't look fine." He forced a thin smile. "I didn't sleep much." Claire nodded, but she did not leave. "My mother passed away last year," she said quietly. "People kept telling me to stay busy, like grief could be outrun." Ethan said nothing. She placed the folders on his desk. "If you need time, real time, take it." "I don't need it," he replied, a little too quickly. Claire met his eyes. "That's what I said too." Then she walked away. Her words lingered longer than he liked. That night, Ethan stood on the balcony of his apartment, the city spread out below him in a constellation of lights. He held a drink in his hand, untouched. The sky was overcast, heavy with clouds that reflected the glow of the city back down onto itself. He thought of his mother praying in her quiet house, of his father leaving with shame in his eyes, of years built on certainty that now felt fragile. The anger that had once kept him upright no longer worked. It had protected him from disappointment, from longing, from hope. Now it felt useless. He set the glass down and leaned against the railing. "Why now?" he asked the night. "Why reveal all of this now?" The question drifted unanswered, but something inside him recognized the truth he had been avoiding. Because now, there was nothing left to lose. Days passed, then weeks. Ethan found himself doing unfamiliar things. He stopped drinking at night. He walked instead, long, aimless walks through the city, letting the movement quiet his thoughts. Once, without planning to, he found himself standing outside a small church, tucked between a bakery and a bookstore. The doors were open, light spilled onto the sidewalk. He stood there for several minutes, heart pounding, an invisible line drawn beneath his feet. He did not cross it, not yet. The first crack came unexpectedly. A voicemail from an unknown number appeared on his phone one evening. He nearly deleted it without listening, nearly. "Ethan," the voice said. He froze. It was his father. The voice sounded older, thinner, but unmistakable. "I don't know if you'll listen to this," the message continued. "I don't even know if this number still belongs to you. Your mother gave it to me years ago." Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears. "I heard about Ruth. I'm so sorry." A pause. "She was better than I deserved." Ethan sank onto the couch. "I'm not calling to explain myself," the voice said quietly. "I don't think explanations fix what I broke." Another pause. "I just wanted you to know that I never stopped loving you, and that I have prayed for you more than you know." Ethan laughed softly, bitter and broken. Prayer again. "Take care of yourself," his father finished. "And if you ever want to talk, I'm here." The message ended. Ethan stared at the phone. For years he had imagined this moment. Confrontation, anger, accusation. He had rehearsed speeches that would finally give his pain a voice. Instead, he felt something worse. Understanding. Understanding did not erase the damage, but it dismantled the armor he had worn so carefully. That night, Ethan sat on the floor of his apartment, his back against the wall, knees pulled to his chest. He pressed his forehead into his arms. "I don't know who I am without being angry," he whispered. The confession trembled in the air. For the first time, he did not feel the need to censor himself. "If you're there," he continued, voice barely audible, "I don't know how to come to you. I don't know how to believe without pretending." He waited. Nothing dramatic happened. No warmth, no voice, no sudden peace, but something subtle shifted. The weight in his chest eased, not gone, but lighter, enough to breathe. Ethan did not call it prayer, but heaven heard it as one. And in the quiet that followed, he sensed not certainty, not answers, but the fragile beginning of something new, something that would demand more of him than anger ever had, something that would require him to face the people he had avoided and the forgiveness he had never wanted to give. The next step was coming, and it would not be gentle. The message from his father stayed on Ethan's phone longer than it should have. He did not delete it. He did not respond. He listened to it once more the following morning, then turned the volume down as if the voice itself might escape and follow him through the day. At work, numbers refused to settle. Lines on screens lost meaning. Conversations drifted past him like noise through water. By mid-afternoon, he closed his laptop and stared at his reflection in the darkened screen. He looked older than he remembered. Not in years, but in weight. That evening he walked instead of taking the train, his steps carrying him without a clear destination. When he finally noticed where he was, he stood once again across the street from the small church between the bakery and the bookstore. The doors were open. This time he crossed the street. The sanctuary was nearly empty. A handful of people sat scattered across the pews, heads bowed, hands folded. The lights were dimmed, casting soft shadows along the walls. No music played, no voices rose in song, just silence. Ethan slipped into a back pew, choosing a seat close to the aisle. His pulse quickened, as if he had entered a place where he did not belong. The air felt different here, not wholly in a dramatic sense, just still, intentional. A woman at the front spoke quietly, reading from a worn Bible. Her voice was steady, unadorned. She did not preach. She read. When she finished, she closed the book and said simply, "We'll sit in silence for a few minutes. Pray if you want, or don't." Ethan's jaw tightened. Pray if you want. The invitation felt dangerous. He stared at the floor as the minutes passed. His thoughts surged, unfiltered. Memories, regrets, anger, longing, all colliding without structure. Finally, against his will, a single question surfaced. What if she was right? What if God had been listening the whole time? Ethan exhaled slowly. "I don't know how to do this," he whispered, his voice barely audible. The words felt foolish, honest. He waited. Again, nothing dramatic happened, but the silence no longer felt empty. It felt shared. He returned the following week, and the week after that. He never spoke to anyone, never volunteered, never sang. He sat. He listened. He breathed. The quiet began to soften something in him. One evening, as people quietly filtered out, an older man approached him. He wore no clerical collar, no title announced him. "I'm Thomas," he said, extending a hand. Ethan hesitated, then shook it. "Ethan," Thomas nodded. "You don't talk much." Ethan almost smiled. I'm not good at it. That's all right, Thomas said. God's not intimidated by silence. The words struck deeper than Ethan expected. I don't know if I believe anymore, Ethan admitted, surprising himself. Thomas's expression did not change. That's not as rare as you think. They stood in silence for a moment. My mother believed, Ethan added quietly. She believed enough for both of us. Thomas nodded slowly. Belief can be borrowed for a season, but eventually we have to decide what to do with it. That night, Ethan walked home lighter than he had in weeks. The call came 3 days later. His father again. This time, Ethan answered. Hello? His voice sounded steadier than he felt. There was a pause on the other end. Ethan? Yes. Another pause. A breath. I'm glad you picked up. They spoke cautiously at first. Neutral ground. Weather. Work. Ruth's kindness. Then the conversation deepened unavoidably. I never meant to disappear, his father said quietly. I thought I was protecting you. Ethan closed his eyes. You left. I know. Silence stretched between them. I hated you for a long time, Ethan said. I built my life around it. I know, his father repeated, and I'm sorry. The apology landed without defense, without explanation. It hurt more than Ethan expected. I don't know how to forgive you, Ethan said honestly. You don't have to today, his father replied. I just wanted to tell you the truth and to ask, if you ever can, would you consider letting me be part of your life again? Ethan's chest tightened. Forgiveness had always sounded noble in theory. In practice, it felt like tearing down the last wall, keeping him safe. I need time, he said. I'll wait, his father replied. I've been waiting most of my life. The call ended. Ethan remained seated long after, phone resting on his knee. Forgiveness would cost him something. It would require letting go of the story that had defined him. That night, in the quiet of his apartment, Ethan knelt beside his bed. He had not knelt like this since childhood. His hands rested awkwardly in his lap. I don't know how to forgive, he whispered, and I don't know how to believe without fear. He swallowed. But if you're real, if grace is real, then I need you to teach me. The words hung in the air. No answer came, but neither did the silence feel empty. Ethan rose slowly, heart heavy but steady. He had taken another step, and with it came the realization that the hardest part of coming back was not believing again. It was choosing to forgive when anger had finally stopped protecting him. Ethan agreed to meet his father on a Thursday afternoon. He told himself it was practical, neutral territory, daylight, an easy exit if things went wrong. A cafe near the river, far enough from his apartment to feel distant, close enough to avoid second thoughts. Still, as he approached the glass-fronted building, his chest tightened. Forgiveness, he was learning, did not arrive as a feeling. It arrived as a decision, often made with trembling hands. His father was already there, older than Ethan remembered, thinner, his hair mostly grey now, his shoulders slightly rounded, as if years of regret had bent him forward. He stood when he saw Ethan, uncertainty written across his face. Ethan, he said. Dad. The word surprised them both. They sat. At first, neither spoke. The river flowed steadily outside the window, indifferent to the weight of the moment. I didn't come to defend myself, his father said finally. I came to tell you the truth, even if it costs me. Ethan nodded. Then start there. His father took a breath. I was weak. I was afraid. I betrayed who I was supposed to be, and when I realized the damage, I ran instead of staying to face it. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he listened. I thought leaving would hurt you less, his father continued. I thought absence was better than being seen as broken. It wasn't, Ethan said quietly. I know, his father replied, and I'm sorry. The simplicity of it stripped away Ethan's defenses. No justifications, no blame, just truth. They spoke for hours. Of the night everything fell apart, of years spent apart, of Ruth's quiet faith and unyielding hope, of prayers spoken into empty rooms. When they parted, nothing was resolved. But something had shifted. The distance between them no longer felt unbridgeable. That evening, Ethan returned to his apartment and found himself unable to sit still. He walked until the city thinned into quiet streets and familiar brick walls. Without planning to, he ended up at the church again. This time the doors were closed. He sat on the steps. The sky darkened overhead, clouds gathering like unspoken thoughts. "I don't know how to do this," he said aloud, his voice low. "I don't know how to forgive without losing myself." He waited. No voice answered, but memory stirred. His mother's words written years ago. Grace does not wait for our perfection. Ethan pressed his palms together, not in confidence, but in surrender. "If you're real," he said slowly, carefully, "then show me how to live without hatred, because I don't know how." The rain began softly, a fine mist at first. He did not move. He let it soak into his jacket, into his hair, into the weight he carried. Something loosened inside him, not suddenly, not completely, but enough to breathe more freely. The following weeks tested that fragile openness. At work, a project collapsed unexpectedly. A client pulled funding. Months of effort vanished overnight. Ethan absorbed the blame without protest. Old habits urged him to harden, to retreat. Instead, he found himself doing something unfamiliar. He asked for help. Claire noticed immediately. "You don't usually do that," she said quietly, as they reviewed revised plans late one evening. "I'm trying something different," Ethan replied. She smiled faintly. "It suits you." The words stayed with him. One night, after another silent gathering at the church, Thomas approached him again. "You look tired," Thomas observed. "I am," Ethan admitted. "Tired can be good," Thomas said. "Means you've stopped pretending." They sat together in the empty sanctuary. "Forgiveness doesn't erase the past," Thomas continued. "It releases the future." Ethan stared at the cross at the front of the room. "I don't feel ready," he said. "No one ever does," Thomas replied. "Grace meets us in motion, not in certainty." That night, alone in his apartment, Ethan opened the last unread letter from his mother. He had saved it, fearing what it might ask of him. The paper was thin, the ink slightly faded. "Ethan, if you are struggling to forgive, remember this. Forgiveness is not saying what happened was acceptable. It is saying it no longer gets to define you." Tears blurred his vision. "You are not responsible for carrying pain that was never meant to be yours." He folded the letter carefully. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a future not shaped by resentment. It frightened him, but it also felt like freedom. That night, Ethan knelt again. Not out of desperation, out of choice. "I'm still angry," he said quietly. "I still have questions. I still don't understand why things happened the way they did." He paused. "But I don't want to live like this anymore." His voice trembled. "If you're there, take what I can't carry." No answers came, but something unmistakable did. Peace, not complete, not overwhelming, but real. The kind that settles slowly, like dawn after a long night. Ethan rose, aware that the road ahead would not be easy. Forgiveness would be tested, faith would be challenged, but for the first time he was no longer walking alone, and the long road toward grace had truly begun. Ethan thought forgiveness would announce itself. He expected a moment, clear, unmistakable, where anger dissolved and clarity replaced it. Instead, forgiveness arrived quietly, almost unnoticed, in the form of difficult choices and unfinished conversations. The call from his father came on a Tuesday night. His voice sounded strained. "I'm in the hospital," he said. "It's nothing life-threatening, at least that's what they say, but I didn't want to be alone." Ethan closed his eyes. The old instinct rose immediately, to protect himself, to stay distant, to offer sympathy without presence. Then he remembered his mother's calendar. "Call Ethan." "I'll come," he said. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and stale air. Ethan found his father in a narrow room on the 4th floor, lying beneath thin white sheets, an IV taped to his arm. He looked smaller here, diminished by fluorescent light and silence. "I didn't expect you," his father admitted. "Neither did I," Ethan replied honestly. They spoke in fragments at first, test results, doctors, timelines. Then the silence thickened. "There's something I never told you," his father said suddenly. His voice wavered. "And if I don't say it now, I don't know if I ever will." Ethan sat down. "I didn't leave just because I was ashamed," his father continued. "I left because I thought God was finished with me." Ethan's brow furrowed. "I believe my failure disqualified me, that grace had limits, that forgiveness was for better men." He swallowed. "So I ran. From you, from your mother, from God." The confession landed heavily between them. Ethan felt something shift inside him. "I spent years angry at God for letting you leave," Ethan said quietly. "And years after that angry at you for not coming back." His father nodded, tears slipping silently down his cheeks. "I never stopped loving you," he said. "But I didn't believe I deserved to be your father." The room fell quiet. Ethan looked at the man before him, not as an absence, not as a wound, but as someone broken in ways he was only beginning to understand. Forgiveness, he realized, was not about forgetting. It was about seeing clearly. "I don't know how to fix this," Ethan said. His father shook his head. "Neither do I." Another pause. "But I want to try," Ethan added. His father reached for his hand, hesitated, then let it fall back onto the bed. "Thank you," he whispered. That night, Ethan walked out of the hospital into cold air that burned his lungs. He did not feel victorious. He felt exposed. Every protective layer he had built was gone. And yet, beneath the vulnerability, there was relief. He had said what needed to be said. Not everything, but enough. The following Sunday, Ethan returned to the church. This time, something was different. The silence felt deeper, the stillness heavier. As he sat, a memory surfaced uninvited. He was a child again, kneeling beside his mother's bed. Her voice was soft, steady. "God is close, Ethan," she had said, "even when you can't feel him." Ethan's chest tightened. For the first time, the memory did not hurt. It healed. When the time of silence ended, Ethan did not leave immediately. He remained seated, hands clasped, heart racing. "I don't know if I believe everything," he whispered, "but I believe enough to stay." The words surprised him. They felt like a line drawn, not backward, but forward. That evening, Ethan visited his father's empty apartment. He needed to gather a few things while his father remained hospitalized. The place was sparse, functional, lonelier than he expected. On a small table near the window sat a Bible. Ethan picked it up. Inside the cover, written in shaky handwriting, were words that stole his breath. "Lord, forgive me. Bring my son back, even if I never see him again." The date was from years earlier. Ethan sat down slowly. All this time, he had believed he was the only one carrying regret. He wasn't. Tears came quietly, not of pain, of release. That night, alone in his apartment, Ethan knelt once more. This time, he did not argue. He did not demand answers. He did not rehearse defenses. "Thank you," he said softly. The words felt foreign, necessary, for not giving up on me, even when I did. He remained there, breathing slowly, deeply. For the first time in years, his heart was quiet, not numb, not guarded, just still. Forgiveness had not erased the past, but it had opened a door, and beyond it, something waited. Not perfection, not certainty, but grace, patient, persistent, and strong enough to hold what Ethan could not. The night did not end with resolution. It ended with honesty, and that, he sensed, was enough to carry him into whatever came next. The call came just before dawn. Ethan had been half awake already, drifting in the thin space between sleep and thought, when his phone vibrated on the nightstand. The room was dim, the city outside still wrapped in silence. "Ethan," the nurse said gently, "your father is asking for you." Ethan dressed without thinking, his movements automatic. The streets were nearly empty as he drove, traffic lights changing for no one. When he arrived at the hospital, the corridors felt longer than before, quieter. The fluorescent lights hummed softly, as if even they were trying not to disturb something fragile. His father lay propped up slightly, eyes open, breathing shallow but steady. He smiled faintly when he saw Ethan. "You came," he said. "I said I would," Ethan replied, taking the chair beside the bed. They sat in silence for a while, not the awkward kind, the kind that allowed space for everything unspoken. "I don't know how much time I have," his father said eventually. "The doctors are careful with their words. I've learned to listen between them." Ethan nodded. "There's something I need to say," his father continued, "not to clear my conscience, but because it's true." Ethan leaned forward. "I spent my life believing God tolerated me at best," his father said. "I believed love was conditional. That failure put me beyond reach," his voice trembled, "and yet he never stopped reaching." Ethan felt his throat tighten. "I see that now," his father said, "and I see it because of you, because you came back." Ethan shook his head slowly. "I didn't come back whole." "No," his father said softly. "You came back honest." The words settled between them like a blessing. Later that morning, when the sun had begun to climb, his father's breathing changed. Shallow, became uneven. The room filled with quiet urgency, nurses entering, soft instructions, careful movements. Ethan stood by the bed, his hand wrapped around his father's. "I'm here," he said quietly. His father's eyes fluttered open one last time. "I know," he whispered, and then gently, he was gone. There was no dramatic moment, no sudden shift in the air, just absence and peace. The funeral was smaller than his mother's. Fewer people knew the man his father had become. But those who came spoke of quiet kindness, of humility, of a faith that had grown deep in hidden places. Ethan stood at the front, listening, not as a son burdened by resentment, but as one shaped by mercy. Afterward, he returned alone to the river. The water moved steadily, unchanged by loss or joy. He thought of his parents, two imperfect people who had carried faith differently, who had loved deeply, failed honestly, and trusted God despite themselves. He thought of himself, still imperfect, still uncertain, but no longer alone. Weeks passed, then months. Ethan did not become someone else overnight. He still had questions, still had days when doubt whispered too loudly, but something fundamental had changed. He stayed. He showed up. He spoke when silence had once been easier. At church, he began to volunteer quietly, setting up chairs, helping with small tasks no one noticed. He never sought attention. He simply served. One evening, Thomas found him stacking chairs after a gathering. "You seem lighter," Thomas observed. "I think I'm finally carrying what belongs to me," Ethan replied. Thomas smiled. "And leaving the rest where it belongs." One autumn afternoon, Ethan returned to the house on Linden Street. He had delayed it long enough. The leaves had turned, painting the street in gold and rust. The house stood as it always had, patient, unassuming. Inside, the air felt calm. He walked through each room slowly, no longer bracing himself. In his mother's bedroom, he opened the prayer journal one last time. The final entry, written days before her death, stopped him. Lord, I place them both in your hands. I trust you to finish what I cannot. Ethan closed the journal carefully. Outside, the light faded gently. He sat on the front steps as evening settled in, the neighborhood quiet around him. For the first time, he prayed without effort. Not many words, just presence. Thank you, he whispered again. That night, as he prepared to leave the house for the last time, Ethan paused in the doorway. He did not feel loss. He felt completion, not the end of pain, but the end of running. Grace had not erased his story. It had redeemed it. And as he locked the door and walked away, Ethan understood something his mother had always known. Faith was not the absence of doubt. It was the courage to remain open to God, to others, and to the quiet work of restoration. The night was still, the road ahead uncertain. But for the first time in his life, Ethan walked forward in peace, carrying not the weight of the past, but the hope of what remained. The first snow fell on a Tuesday morning. It was light, almost hesitant, as if the sky were unsure whether it was ready to let go. Ethan watched from his apartment window as small white flecks drifted downward, settling briefly on rooftops and sidewalks before melting away. He had learned to notice small things again. There had been a time when he measured life in milestones, promotions, projects completed, goals achieved. Now he measured it differently, in moments, in pauses, in the subtle ways God worked without announcement. He pulled on his coat and stepped outside. The city moved more slowly under the snow. People walked carefully, heads down, hands tucked into pockets. The noise was muted, softened, as if the world itself had decided to listen. Ethan walked toward the church, not because it was Sunday, because it had become part of his rhythm. Inside, the sanctuary was empty. Sunlight filtered through the high windows, pale and gentle, illuminating the simple wooden cross at the front. Ethan sat in the third pew, the same place he had chosen weeks ago, without realizing it would become familiar. He did not kneel, he did not fold his hands, he simply sat. For a long time, no words came, and that was enough. He thought of his mother's prayers, spoken in quiet rooms, written in careful ink, offered without demand for outcome. He thought of his father's journey, of a faith born not from confidence, but from repentance. And he thought of himself, still learning, still healing, still becoming. "I'm here," he whispered at last. It was not a declaration, it was a surrender. That afternoon, Ethan visited the hospital again, not as a son this time, but as a volunteer. He had signed up weeks earlier, uncertain why, only aware that something in him had shifted from retreat to offering. He spent an hour sitting beside a man who spoke little and listened much. Another hour holding the hand of a woman whose family lived too far away to visit often. He did not preach. He did not explain suffering. He stayed. As he left, the woman squeezed his hand gently. "Thank you for not leaving," she said. The words struck deeper than she could have known. In the weeks that followed, Ethan found himself becoming a quiet presence in the lives of others. He checked in on Claire when her workload overwhelmed her. He listened without fixing. He invited his father's old neighbor to lunch when he learned she had no family nearby. None of it felt heroic. It felt necessary. And in those ordinary acts, something sacred unfolded. One evening, Thomas joined him on a walk along the river. "You've changed," Thomas said, not as an observation, but as a confirmation. "I don't feel changed," Ethan replied. "I feel aligned, like I've stopped resisting." Thomas nodded. "That's often what healing looks like." They stopped at the edge of the water, watching reflections ripple and break. "Do you know what redemption really is?" Thomas asked. Ethan considered the question. "Not erasing the past," he said slowly, "but allowing it to become something that gives life instead of taking it." Thomas smiled. "Your mother would agree." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. Not painful, not sharp, grateful. Spring came quietly. The snow melted, trees budded, the city breathed again. Ethan returned one final time to the house on Linden Street, not to sort, not to remember, but to let go. He walked through each room slowly, touching door frames, windowsills, the edges of furniture worn smooth by time. In the living room, he stood beneath the cross above the doorway. For years, it had represented everything he had rejected. Now it represented something else. Grace that endured absence. Love that waited without demand. He did not remove it. He left it where it was. Some things were meant to remain. That night, back in his apartment, Ethan stood by the window once more. The city lights shimmered against the dark. His life was not perfect. Questions remained unanswered. Scars still existed, but his heart was no longer closed, and that changed everything. He knelt, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. "Thank you," he said simply. No explanations followed, no promises, just gratitude, the kind that rises naturally when peace has finally found a place to rest. Somewhere beyond what could be seen or measured, a quiet work had been completed. Not in spectacle, not in certainty, but in faith that endured doubt, forgiveness that cost something, and love that refused to abandon what was broken. Ethan rose slowly, aware that tomorrow would bring ordinary challenges, and he would meet them, not alone, not armored, but open. The storm had passed. What remained was not silence, but hope, and it was enough.